So I'm excited to be here. This is such an amazing day. Being outside in nature, being outside with plants, being outside with all this love with the community. My man Cat Fitness, can you give Cat Fitness right here? He's doing a wonderful job today. The vegan Hood chefs, the whole team has been an amazing event. So I'm super excited to be a part of this. I like to always start my story today talking about my personal journey to becoming a vegan. Actually, I was born into a family. Believe it or not, I'm from Southern Maryland, and I don't say Maryland, I say Maryland. Can everybody say Maryland, right? Maryland, I'm a country boy. So I grew up in Southern Maryland, about 45 minutes south of Washington, D.C. I was actually, believe it or not, I was adopted at birth. Can you imagine being adopted at birth into a family that has a last name Chew? So my last name is actually C-H-E-W. My father, believe it or not, when I was born, my father actually grew up, in Jim Crow South. He actually was a sharecropper. Anybody know what sharecropping is? Anybody heard of sharecropping? So he actually worked the farm for a Caucasian gentleman, for a white man, and pretty much for all of his life, up until his 20s and 30s. He pretty much worked the land. And again, that type of lifestyle, my father grew up. My father, when I was a kid, I remember he was actually shooting things like squirrel. He ate squirrel. He literally ate. It's a rabbit back there. That rabbit chance wouldn't have a chance. Fried chicken, pork chops, ham, you name it, bacon. I was talking to my mom this morning. I said, for breakfast, can you imagine for breakfast? We eat the egg, right? All the cholesterol, the fat with the egg. Then we got the bacon on top of that. Might throw some scrapple, some sausage, spam. You know what I mean? And then, some grits, the carbs we were talking about today. Maybe might have some fruits, some bread, but that's typically then for lunch. We're gonna probably have go to McDonald's, get a burger, get something to eat, and then dinner, you're gonna have another fried chicken and whatever else for dinner. So my lifestyle, again, growing up, a lot of it was very meat-centered. So there was a study by the USDA that talked about meat consumption by race. Meat consumption by race. Now, the study that what they did, they showed blacks, Hispanics, Caucasians, and I believe Asians. Now, a crazy story here is that out of consumption of fried chicken, or not chicken, but not fried chicken, but chicken, turkey, pork, and fish, African Americans ate more of all those meats than any other ethnic group. Okay? In Latino communities, Hispanics ate more beef than the other community. Now, the crazy thing is that in my family, in my father's side of the family, many of them start having lifestyle diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, cancer. All these type of lifestyle diseases started plaguing our family. Sad to say, many of them begin to die in their early 50s. I don't know if you can imagine when you have uncles and aunts that you love the most, and many of them start dying prematurely from diseases that can be prevented. Now, my mother's here from Maryland. Can you give it up to Mama Chew? Mama Chew, Mama Chew. Now, Mama Chew, my mother grew up, she was raised in a family that was Seventh Adventist. Anybody heard of Seventh Adventist before? They're vegetarians, a lot of them are vegetarians. My uncles and my aunts, a lot of them actually were vegetarians. So can you imagine, my father's sitting in the window, a country boy, he's shooting squirrels, and then I went to church with my uncle and my aunt, they eating veggie meat, veggie burgers. This is in the 80s and the 90s, eating vegetarian foods. So this was like a total shock for me, again, eating meat, all this stuff during the week. And I finally got exposed to vegetarian meat at a young age. The great thing I always say, when I became a vegan, my uncles and my aunts were vegetarian. When I started eating it, they made it taste good. Now, one of the most important things as you transition to eating healthy is that the food has to do what? Taste good. Y'all understand where I'm coming from, right? Again, my father didn't really eat chili. My mother said we ain't never bring chili to our house. My aunt Faye, she would eat chili. Now, if anybody ever cooked chilies before, anybody ever smelled chilies before? It smells like you can smell something, right? It smells sour. It just makes the whole house stink, right? But the crazy thing is, I always say this: if you can make chitlins taste good, you better believe you can make vegetables taste good. Can I get an amen there? Come on now, talk to me. If you can make chitlins taste good, you best to believe you can make some vegetables taste good, right? So all of that to say, what I learned from my family, again, I didn't eat chitlins and stuff as I got older, but I learned that there was a creative side to all of us. there's a creative energy inside of us that, again, that there's something inside of us that we want to create healthy food that tastes delicious. There's something in all of us. And so I always say, as one of the Chef Bliss was saying, that our ancestors, again, passed these recipes down to us. They passed these recipes down to us, and they learned how to make them taste good. But I'm here to say that same creativity can be placed into creating healthy food that also tastes amazing. So again, my journey came on. Again, I'm 12 years old. I stopped eating pork when I was 12 years old. Eventually, when I was 18 years old, I went 100% plant-based when I was 18 years old. So you imagine, again, at that time, again, it wasn't, this is in 2001, almost 20 years ago. There wasn't any plant-based foods in the market like we see today. All these, you know, fake chicken and fake cheese and all that stuff. Soy milk wasn't really that popular at that time. I went vegan when it wasn't even popular. But I got excited because I saw, again, my father had the best recipe on this. My mother made the best sweet potato pie, the best potato salad. And I wanted to learn, how can I veganize those recipes that I love the most? So what I'm coming today to tell you is that my personal journey, I went from a straight avid meat eater, eat everything that walked, that lived, that breathed, to going 100% plant-based. But I also had the tenacity to know that it can actually taste good if I got inside the kitchen and tried. Now, a lot of us say, man, I don't know if I can ever do that again. Anybody scared of cooking vegan? Anybody in here? Like, I don't know if I can make this stuff taste vegan and taste good. Anybody feel that way? Anybody here? I guess everybody here says I can cook this stuff, huh? So I was that guy that, again, I wasn't afraid to go into the kitchen and try it. But again, it was a journey. But fast forwarding, what I want you guys to look at is that you ask yourself, like cities like West Oakland or East Oakland, why don't we have a lot of plant-based or healthy options in our communities? Anybody think about that reality? You got cities all across America. If you go down to LA, there's a study in LA that talks about South Central LA opposed to like West Hollywood. And in these places, they got places that have, tons of health food stores, tons of fresh vegetables, all these things. But on the south side or the east side of some of these cities, those things are non-existent. You ever ask that question, why this actually exists? What I want to bring out today is something called food deserts. Anybody heard of food deserts? Now, when you think about this word, food deserts, I want you all to first think about this, a simple word. What is a desert? Somebody help me out? What's a desert?
Dry place.
A dry, deserted, a place where there's probably not a lot of life or limited life, right? It's dry, it's desolate. Life pretty much doesn't exist in these places. And so what I want you all to think about, a food desert. Now follow this. Now here we have a place called a food desert. That means that food that we need for survival and for life, there's not foods available that's going to promote life for us. Everybody with me so far, right? Now, I want y'all to understand this. We are on a farm, right? Y'all see this farm over there, right? This is a farm. Now, in order for these plants to grow, they need what to grow? They need water. Water has life, right? What else do they need to grow? The soil, right? Now, think about the basic building blocks of life. Water and soil, right? Do you understand that these same chemicals that's found in the water and in the soil make up the what? The human body. Again, as a biologist, they will tell you there are chemists, there's 66 chemicals in the human body, okay? There's 11 primary chemicals in the human body, and there's 4 major chemicals in the human body. You got, again, H2O. Our bodies are what? 90% water, right? I think 96%. I forget the exact percentage. But we're mainly made up of water. Hydrogen, what's H2O? Help me out. Hydrogen, oxygen, and what? And carbon, right? And so the soil has phosphorus, calcium, iron. All those things are found where? In the soil. Now again, you think about a food desert is a place that's not going to give you the food that you need to sustain what? Life. Now again, the reason why it's so important for us to have living and foods that come from the soil, because those same things that we're made of, we are made of from the dust of the soil. This same food is what we need to eat to promote what? Life. So food that we're eating doesn't come from the very thing that we're made of, which is the dirt. Guess what? What's going to happen to us? Our bodies are going to begin to what? Break down. So what we find is that in food deserts, there are places that are what? Are laden with what? Convenience stores, the liquor stores, fast food restaurants are all prevalent in these locations. Now, the sad reality is that most of the convenience stores, the liquor stores, aren't owned by people that live in their communities. The ownership of these stores aren't owned by the people that actually live in these communities. You ever notice that? Then when you go to these places, most of them have bars and they're caged up and so forth. So a lot of people that are going in where they get their food, they're going into places that you don't really want to kind of get your food from because it's caged up, it's barred up. It's almost like they're looking at it, it's almost like they're feeding animals. Because it's not, the concept is that these places are not looking after you. They're looking at it from the what? From the dollar. So they have addictive foods, they have cigarettes, they have alcohol, all these things that cause what? Addictive type behaviors. With the food that's going to give us life and give us sustenance, these foods are not in these locations. So therefore, what happens? The counter reality of it, we're living in a war zone. What is a war zone? A place where you probably going to get what? You're going to get killed. So you think about a food desert, a place devoid of life, devoid of health promoting foods that's going to give you life. A place where, again, there's foods that's not going to promote health and longevity. But on the flip side, these food deserts have people that have high rates of diabetes, high rates of cancer, high rates of all types of osteoporosis, all kinds of diseases that we all are familiar with. And so the question is, how did that happen? Was it by happenstance? Did it just come about? Was it by design? Now, if you go back in history, in 1934, for a history lesson, there was something called the National Housing Act. What is it called, everybody?
National Housing Act.
In 1934, there was something called the National Housing Act. Now, I want you guys to think about Oakland, right? In Oakland, you got East Oakland, you got West Oakland, and then you got kind of the hills, right? Now, sad to say, the people that the have-nots live where? In the flats, right? That's the West and I'm not from Oakland, so I might mess up a little bit. This, my understanding is that the have-nots typically live in the west side of Oakland and also the what? The east side of Oakland, right? But then those that have live where? Up in the hills. Now, do you understand why that happened? Is that this happened that way, or you think they designed it that way? Now, understand this. In these same areas, in these west sides of Oakland and east sides of Oakland, you have a lot of the industrial parks in these places, right? A lot of the production and the factories and so forth. So what do you think the better air quality is going to be? Is it going to be in the hills or the east or the west side of the city? The hills are going to have the better air quality, right? And you're going to also find that a lot of production and so forth, refineries and so forth, like Richmond, for example, is right beside an oil plant, right? And who lives in Richmond, right? So you find that a lot of times the people on the lower socioeconomical pole find themselves living in conditions that don't have a lot of good air quality and is not really ideal for residential homes. So when they did that, it was something called redlining. Anybody heard of something called redlining? When they started putting African Americans and minority groups in certain sections of those cities. So there was something called structural racism that created zones where blacks and minority groups lived and where it wasn't favorable for getting house mortgages. So when there was a housing boom in America, blacks were not a part of that. Minority groups were not a part of that because they weren't pretty much living in those areas that got favorable loans. They got high interest rate loans. And on the other side of that, this all